into the unknown, into the unseen, the unexplainable, and the unbelievable. Join our strange journeys. Are you ready?
And the change from then to now is extraordinary.
Yeah.
And also, I think the way people think about ghosts and the number of people who are willing to talk publicly about it and who want to understand what the experience is, that has changed radically too. I know for me, even when I was researching these books, I didn't open up my own abilities because I still have little kids, and I didn't want, it was bad enough that their mom was going to write about ghosts, but I didn't want them to get teased if mom was super weird. So
Yeah.
I was very shut down. And then about 10 years or so ago, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't be normal. It's too hard. I hate
No.
it. So then I was able to jump in and open everything back up and relearn and work
Good.
and develop skills and things again. So if I were to go, when I approach ghosts now, I'm not going in and just recording people's experiences. My work now is to go where people have problems, because I can go in and I can be an intermediary, and I can try to negotiate some terms so that people can live with their ghost. And those two different levels of reality, just as we talked about in the fairy show, where we have all sorts of realms and realities and different frequencies that we may not be aware of in our physical life. I feel at this point that the ghost and ghost phenomenon are multiple types of realities that are intersecting with ours. And that's why you have so many different types of ghostly manifestations and so much paranormal activity that can differ greatly from the freaky, scary guys in the black hats, all the way down to seeing your grandmother walk through your living room and she's perfectly welcome to be there.
Right.
So things have really changed.
Well, they have dramatically, and in the Mobile area, you're a part of that change. I think
Thank you.
you brought about part of that change. Do you remember your very first paranormal experience?
I was so small. I was in grade school when I really started to get a lot of stuff. When you're just a little child and you're playing and you're living in your own little world, when you're really small, you accept all of that, and so nothing sticks out. But then when you go to school and you begin having to navigate kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and you're getting a greater awareness of the world outside of your little sphere, and that's when I started to hear things. Really, the clairaudient stuff was really big. And then to begin to see things and see things moving and pick up things in my environment that should not be there. And that was in like first through third grade or so.
Wow.
And that's also when a lot of the knowing stuff, the psychic stuff for clairvoyance and stuff started kicking in. But that hit right at that time, going in middle school, and you don't want to be weird, or you don't be any weirder than you already are. And that's, so I began to shut it down, and then I longed for it. So that's why I inhaled any ghost story I could find anywhere. I absolutely jumped on it because I longed for it. I missed it so much because I had so firmly shut those doors, but inside me, it ached for it. It wanted it so bad.
Oh, cool. Now, when you said you
As
saw stuff, go ahead, Lewis.
as a sensitive, how do you primarily sense spirits?
Mostly, well, I mean, all of them. They talk about all the different clairs, clairaudient, claircognizant.
Mhm.
A big sense for me is feeling, and it gets a little entangled because I also have synesthesia, which I didn't know till I
Okay.
was an adult. So that means that my sensory processing, my wiring is all woven together. So
Wow.
I
Oh,
feel
wow.
it, I hear it, I sense it, I get visuals, I get everything in just real life. So then when you start throwing the non-physical stuff in there, it's processed. When I'm doing mediumship work, I do a lot of physical mediumship. I'll feel it in my body if someone had a specific illness or a physical manifestation. I'll feel it,
Wow.
hear it. It's however it wants to come in. It's however it wants to come in that day. It's what kind of frequency are they broadcasting on? And is that a frequency that is going to be easier for a sensitive person to pick up with their ears? Do you hear it? Do you get the pictures like the movie in your head? Do you feel it in your body? Do you get a flash of an image? Do you get words in your head? Do you feel it?
Wow.
You know, it's a lot of what comes from their side. And I think that manifests in ghost stories too. And people saying, we see the ghost, or we hear the ghost, or things move, or I get chills, or I feel really weird in this room. I think that's that frequency. What are they broadcasting on? And what is the human person who's receiving it? How are they receiving it? And what sense is it easiest to link up and pull that through? Is it vision? Is it tactile? Is it mental?
That's unique.
No,
I mean,
you know what? It's not.
Well, I mean,
I don't think it is. I really don't. I think people just shut it down.
You're
And I
right.
think so many of us do this without realizing that we're doing it because it's what we've always done. So we don't know anything different. So I'm sorry not to contradict you.
No.
But to me, this is normal.
Right.
And many people, it's amazing now as compared, like we were just talking about, as compared to the old days, so many people are open now and will say to me, I knew that, I felt that, I saw that, I've heard it. And 20 years ago,
No. I mean, you were right. I mean, it's not unique, but it's unique the way you share that, and that more people experience like that than let on.
yes,
And like you said, they shut it down.
right.
And I know I did that. What were you saying, Tim?
I was going to say, I know that society has told us this isn't real, and so
Mhm.
we do trying to push it off to the side.
Right.
Here, we don't
And
want to talk
everybody,
about it.
you tell children, when children are very, very young and they say these things, you say, oh, you have such a wonderful imagination. This is amazing. This is wonderful. And then a few years
Yeah.
later, once you hit 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, you're like, that's just your
Yeah.
imagination.
Yep.
That's just your imagination. And it gets dismissed. So a really wonderful, valuable tool gets dismissed and shut down. And when we really need it.
But it's like you brought out in, I think, our first fairies show, how this used to be the norm. I mean, this was part of everyday life. Fairies,
Right.
I mean, when the other ancient cultures that believed in the little people or supernatural, it was the norm.
Right. It was a world full of symbols and symbolism and messages constantly.
Exactly.
We were always
Exactly.
reading skies, and
Yep.
now it's all been taken away from us because now we have science, which
Yeah.
is wonderful, but
Well, I think
it shouldn't
I think-
displace other
Yeah.
things.
you said it in the first show. We've lost magic.
Yes.
Yeah, magic has gone away, and we need to get it back.
Mhm.
Well, Elizabeth, you've told a bunch of ghost stories in your books. What is your favorite kind of ghost story?
My most favorite kind of ghost story is ghosts that happen in everyday life in people's homes.
Mhm.
I know there's fantastic stories related to whole specializations of stories related to theaters or
Right.
public buildings or first responders or there's a ghost story collection of trucker ghost stories. Just fabulous, super fantastic things. But what I really like the most are ghosts that happen in homes and how they affect people, because it's not by chance if you're in a home and you are having ghost experiences. Everything is connected, and it's not by chance if this is happening to you, is my opinion.
Well, I noticed that, like in your first book, you went over like some of the more popularized or famous ghost stories in the Mobile area, and then you graduated away from that into personal ghost stories, homes, houses, families that were haunted. Then your second book was primarily just that, Yeah,
I had kind of covered the big places that are easy for people to go visit. I really wanted people to be able to go visit and feel for themselves. And just as we're talking about, go and put your own feelers out and see what you think and what you feel. And when you're in these locations open to the public. So I did that, but boy, it's really, to me, it's very, there's a lot of meaning, and it's very, the experiences of regular everyday people in homes having ghost encounters. There's a lot there, and it can be very meaningful and very, very deep. And it means more than when I was a kid reading ghost stories and it was just a creepy thing that happened to speculate over. It's so much deeper than that, I think. Well,
and that's one thing. That's one thing I think you focus on in your books. You bring in that personal experience. So Tim had to go. He had a prior obligation, so he had to skip out early on us. But he said, thank you for joining us. We greatly appreciate you.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. It's my favorite thing in the world to talk about. Like I told you, I so enjoy being on your show because we can talk about this stuff without having to edit or worry that people think we're weird, because we're all, on the same, have the same interest, and bring an open mind to it, which is all I've asked for in my books. I tried to write my books in such a way that would be respectful to the experiences, the firsthand experiences, but also wouldn't go one way or the other. People could read them and decide what they thought for themselves about what I was recounting.
Well, that brings me back to this. Personal experience. In my opinion, that's the only true and irrefutable evidence. I mean, you can have EVPs, you can have videos of shadow figures, but that person's experience is the most, to me, the most solid form of evidence that there is.
Right.
That's why we started these shows with Personnel Paranormal, each of us sharing our own experience. And that's where this show got started. That's where we want to stay. We want to tell people's experience. We're going to talk about weird stuff later on in other shows. We've talked about black-eyed kids, but we tried to get personal experiences so that we can focus on that. Now, Elizabeth, what kind of stories do you get the most feedback from your readers?
Well, we joked about me being a ghost. And I am a ghost. I never hear from anybody. I really don't. Then one funny thing is occasionally when sometimes people will contact me and say, can you help? We have a ghost problem. And I always say, absolutely. What do you need? I'd love to try to help you. And then in many, many cases, people will come back and say, no, I've changed my mind. I don't want to make them mad.
Oh, wow.
So I'm like, okay, people are still really freaked out. I think when people, if they were contacting me, or if they wanted to, a lot of times want to tell me about their own stories, it suddenly makes it real to tell me. Then suddenly it's real, and they've shared it, and it's gotten a little too something that's become a little too valid.
Yeah.
And that can really scare people. That's the biggest thing that I run into that grieves me, is how scared people can be. And I so appreciate it, because I've been scared too. But I hate to think of people living in circumstances where they're scared all the time. That really, that really bothers me. While I understand how it can happen, for me, this is normal. But for people like the people I interviewed in one of the books, who lived near Oakley, in the Oakley neighborhood, who so earnestly said to me, we were not brought up to believe in this. This was not part of our upbringing or what our church believes or anything. And we don't know we don't understand how we find ourselves in this. So,
well, we mentioned you in the last show, our strange sighting segments, which we went on past that today because we had so much other stuff to do. But we had a lady on that had taken some pictures of what looked like portals or a vortex opening up in her backyard.
Right. The ones that were like the circles that look like it's turned on its side.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
She felt a pressure. She said it was like going up an airplane and you feel like your ears need to pop. And then she saw a manifest, and she just happened to have her phone out there, so she snapped a couple of pictures. And we told her, it's like, okay. I told her when we closed out, I said, you need to talk to Elizabeth.
I did see when you posted those pictures, and I started to reply, and then I thought, oh no, it's too weird. It's too weird.
No.
It's not. But realities are closer now, because people are more open to it and more interested in it. Then that's why we're noticing and seeing this stuff more. And then of course, everybody's got a phone. So it's not like you have to go dig the camera out of the back of the closet and pray it has film. People can document this stuff. So everybody's consciousness is becoming more open to the fact that we are not living in a snow globe, isolated, floating in the physical reality. There's a world around us that is filled with other realities and other frequencies, and other things are happening, and sometimes our realities intersect, and more it seems like.
Well, the thing that I'm sorry, go ahead, Lewis.
I just had a question. You mentioned when you were talking about helping people, how is if you go in and help someone, how does that typically go? What do you do to help them?
I've had a partner that I've worked with who has, from illness, is not able to work anymore. So I haven't done anything in quite a while, particularly with the lockdown, and people also didn't want, people were scared to interact. Typically, I get notified that somebody would like me and my partner would like us to come to their home if they're having a problem. At that point, I don't want to know anything else. We don't want to know. Right. I'll do work. The time gets set up for us or for me to come. Prior to that, a day or so before, I'll start doing work. I'll start doing meditation and trancing to try to start getting information and tuning into that station, tuning into that frequency, and see if I can hear anything, receive it, and start making notes and start getting a sense of what's going on in the house or the location. And then when we head out, you have to have a Sherpa. Can't do it by yourself, I've learned. You have to have a Sherpa who can drive you and who can run interference for you, because you have to change your receptivity. You can't walk around. It's not like on TV where you walk around all day seeing ghosts and going up to people in the grocery store and saying, "Are you open to having a message from your dead father?" I mean, that's for a lot of reasons you don't do that.
Right.
So when you are going into a location, that's when you start changing your pointing that satellite dish in a different direction so you can receive on a different channel. And when you get there, still. Ideally, you can do a run-through of a walkthrough of the house and make your notes and pick up on everything in the house before the homeowner can tell you. That's why you got to have your Sherpa to visit with the homeowner and keep them in the other room when you're allowed to walk through the home and pick stuff up. And then you sit down with all this, your little scribbled notes, and then you finally sit down with the homeowner and say, this is what I'm getting. And then the homeowner can, you can start connecting those dots.
Nice.
Usually the spirit or the energy in the house is at this point wildly interested in what's going on and will approach and want to know what's happening.
Well,
and then
yeah.
you can begin to connect with them. And then it's a matter of we have sent people over, crossed them over if they needed that kind of help.
Yeah.
We've also had people who don't want to go over, and you can't force anybody to do that. That's their
No.
free will. But in that case, you can begin negotiations and work out some boundaries and some ground rules and work
Wow.
out kind of a map, a little exit strategy here. And then if there's weird, wonky energy in the house, you can move energy around and you can clear out the house from weird, wonky energy. And hopefully about 2 hours later, you've managed to restore some confidence in the homeowner that they can live peacefully and comfortably in their home. And you've managed to get them, if the ghost is still there, you've managed to get them on a more friendly basis where they've been able to communicate and see where the other's coming from, and leave the place in a better state than when you found it, ideally. And then you're wonky, and then you have to go eat. Then you have to go eat a lot of food because you're so whacked out. At that point, your Sherpa has to drive you immediately to a restaurant so that you can stuff your face with pasta or whatever and try to come down. So.
Now,
Good
have
Sherpa.
you ever had an experience going into a location and not finding paranormal activity or anything there?
Well, I've had in the two kind of things there. In one place where we went, there was some really nasty stuff that had been attracted to the fact that there was a lot going on there. So they'd attracted some randos who were just out looking to mess with people. And in that home, the weirdest place in that home was a bedroom where we'd been they'd indicated that a lot had gone on in the person who lived in that bedroom. When we went to that bedroom, it was a vacuum. There was no energy. It was like a crime scene that had been wiped. And you see on cop dramas and things, the cops will say there's no prints, there's no DNA, there's nothing. Energetically, it had been wiped by these energies with bad intent, these spirits with bad intent who didn't want to be found. And they had sucked every bit of energy out of that room. And that was an extraordinary thing to feel nothing, to feel a vacuum. And in another place I visited very early on when I went by myself and I didn't have a Sherpa and I was new to it, I went and the homeowner was very intent that the spirit in the home was a certain family member. And it wasn't. It absolutely wasn't. And I tried to respectfully say, that's not what I'm getting. Do you recognize a person who's dressed like this and who had mannerisms like this and who looks like this? Do you recognize that person? And the homeowner was like, no. But the other homeowner was like, but couldn't budge that homeowner because the homeowner had a lot invested in this spirit being someone else who was near and dear.
Yeah.
So at that point, if you can't make a connection and begin weaving in the homeowner's energy, your energy, what you're tying into, the spirit, if you can't get everybody on the line for the conference call, I assure you the spirit is like, I got stuff to do.
Yeah.
I'm not sticking, and they're peaced out and they're gone, which leaves the poor medium standing there like, So there was nothing I could do. And I felt horrible about it. But that later, it's a happy ending much later down the road where lights went off and connections were made and it ended well. But those two things are the weirdest things I've ever had happen where I just couldn't get anywhere and I got shut down. And then that weird place with no energy at all. And then it's not uncommon, which you certainly know from investigating experiences. You guys know that you can go into a place and the ghosts are like cats. You walk in and they're like,
They hide.
And
They
I know
hide.
that one of my very good friends, who has invited me to investigate with him before, he's like, I'm not staying here all night. You walk in, you get established, the cat ghosts come creeping back out to see what's going on, and they're going to give you about 2 hours, and then they're done. They don't want to play with you anymore. They're done. So it very much like that too. Just because you show up and you have the ability to talk to them does not mean that they want to talk to you.
True.
You've got to be respectful and try to find ways to work around and do what you can do within the limits of how much everybody's going to play together.
That makes sense.
You know?
That is so true. And his question leads me to, I wanted you to tell the story again about where you went into the person's house, thought they were having poltergeist activity, had been told they had poltergeist activity. You remember that one from the first Fairies show?
Oh, the brownie.
Yeah.
The brownies. Oh, yes. I knew a lovely, terrific guy who no longer, has moved and isn't here anymore, but was having an acquaintance of mine, a terrific guy, was really vexed because stuff was getting moved in his house and there was noises and there was weird stuff and just not enough to upset him. There wasn't anything scary, but there was enough weirdness going on that he was quite unsettled, and he told me about it, and he was like, got a ghost, got a poltergeist. And I'm like, you got brownies, and that's another situation where people will think that they have a classic ghost, but there's so much more that it could be and might be. Well, really, you got to keep an open mind about when weirdness happens, you got to keep an open mind because the weird is so much bigger than we were ever taught that it was.
Oh my gosh, ain't that the truth?
Yeah.
But I got some friends in Tennessee, and I sent you their little video clips.
Yes.
They've got orbs like crazy, and it's only happening with the wife. You know, she'll pass her phone off to somebody else, and there won't be any orbs, and she'll get it back.
It's connected.
And there was one came right up, like it was just coming right up into the phone, that I thought was so unique. But they're convinced it was fairies, and so it may or may not be. But
it doesn't matter because I felt something different about it. I had another suggestion, but it doesn't matter because the experience that they are having, as I said, when you're having these experiences, it's for a reason. It's not for nothing. This is not randomly happening to you. It means there's a point to it. It's a lever or it's a catalyst to do something to open you up. And if it works for them that it's fairies, then it's fairies, because it's their experience and it's what they need it to be. You can't come in and say, you're definitely having... you see on the paranormal shows, depending on who goes in to do the investigating, you could send 3 different teams in there with 3 different sets of filters and perspectives and have a poor homeowner told 3 totally different things.
Exactly. Exactly.
So it's what you need it to be, what serves you and what's going to move you forward on some understandings and things that you need to know.
Most definitely. And that's one thing I appreciate about you, Elizabeth, is that you are open. Because I have some friends in the paranormal that they're just dogmatic on this or they're dogmatic on that. And it's just refreshing to, like I tell people, I'm an open-minded skeptic.
Sure.
I make the classification of the skeptic, the believer, the open-minded believer, the open-minded skeptic, and then there's the non-believer. But I fall under the category of open-minded skeptic. I believe questioning is healthy.
Yes.
That's how I ended up to where I'm at today. Not that that's anything spectacular, but I was caught on one of those paths that was just dogmatic. This is the way. This is the path. And when I opened up and began to question everything, that's when that's what led me to this point of strange journeys.
Mhm.
Now, we've gone well over an hour. We're about an hour and 20, and we haven't even gotten to your books yet. But let's. I just want to do a couple more stories, and then we'll close it out. And just remind everybody, her books are Mobile Ghost, Mobile, Alabama's Haunted Port City, Mobile Ghost 2, The Waterline, and then the compilation, which I don't have a hard copy. I got it on Kindle. Haunted Mobile. Now, is that one? Yep, there's Lewis's copies. He's got a hard copy. Is that an actual both books together, or just picked stories from each book?
It's not all the stories. When the publisher contacted me and asked me to put a title together for them so they could include it in their Haunted America line, they asked me specifically to pull out the haunted houses. They just wanted haunted houses. So there are some stories, a handful of stories in Ghost 1 and Ghost 2 that are not in Haunted Mobile.
Oh, okay. All right. So it's worth it to have all three, folks. So if you haven't gotten those books, they are available on Amazon. And I just, before we close out, Elizabeth, let's talk about, you mentioned a couple of things. So I'm going to bring them back up to you. The haunted antique dining room furniture.
Yes. We people ask all the time about objects, and can objects be haunted, and how do you end up with a ghost if you've never had a ghost, and do you bring them in on antiques and things like that? Yes, you can. We bought many years ago. We found in an antique store, we found a set of dining room furniture that wasn't super fancy or very old. It was about, at that point, it was about 80 years old, but the table would make out big enough for what we wanted. We were trying to get a certain size. So it came with the table and all the chairs, the china cabinet, the silver server. It was great. It was a complete set. And it had been we understood it had been in one family, and it had come from an estate sale. So this had been owned by one family the whole time, and that's why it still was a complete set. So It was a good deal, and we bought it. And we brought it home right before Thanksgiving, and I had set it up in the we of course got the dining room set up, and in that house I could be on the staircase and see the dining room because it was an open floor plan. I was getting ready for Thanksgiving, and I was doing some decorating, and I was over by the stairs, and I realized in my peripheral vision that a little blonde girl was standing at the table. She had her hands on the chair at the end, and she was just looking around, And I thought, did a double take, and she was gone.
Wow.
Well, from then on, I didn't say anything because my kids were little and I didn't want to scare them. I didn't say anything, but from then on, my kids began to see the little blonde girl, and she was about the same size and age as my daughter at that time, who was also blonde.
Oh,
so we would have things happen like I remember so clearly. I was ironing, and my son, who was little at the time, very little, like 7 or 8, came up to me and said, "Mom, I just saw Sissy, and she went into her room, and I followed her because I wanted to ask her about something, and she's not there. Nobody's in her room. Where is Sissy?" And then once I was folding laundry and saw her walk right by the door, and I thought, she's gone to her bedroom, and she wasn't there. So we were mistaking her half the time for our daughter. When we moved into our new house, I did invite her. I told her she could come that we were moving, and that she was welcome to come, and she did. And she stayed with us a really long time, and we'd see her occasionally. Our reality just intersected with hers, and so occasionally we'd see her strolling through the house. And the only thing I can account for it was this dining room furniture that we bought and brought in. She's gone now. She's been gone for quite a long time, and we don't have anything but we have the china cabinet still, but we used the furniture till it fell apart.
Oh my.
We don't have her anymore, but that's how you can have a perfectly normal family and just not well, I mean, we're not, but other people can be perfectly normal and buy a haunted set of dining room furniture or bring in
Wow.
objects into their house that have attached to them a
Yeah.
strong enough signal that will pull in people who lived with that furniture. I'm sure she was from that family at some point and lived and
Right.
recognized that furniture. And she just wanted to know where it went and who was there, and then hung out with us because I had kids and a daughter
Yeah.
her age.
Oh, that's
So-
amazing. All right. What about the Yankee soldiers?
Yankee soldiers are all over my neighborhood, all over my neighborhood. I'm in Spanish Fort, where the last battle of the war was
Mhm.
fought.
Yep.
Down the bluff from me is where the Confederates took off and made it to the river and got out of here and avoided being captured, the ones who lived.
Uh-huh.
And my part of the neighborhood is apparently where all the Yankees camped, because
Okay.
everybody around here has ghosts and they all are Yankee soldiers.
There
I've had two in my house,
Uh-huh.
and I had one who was African American, and I believe his name was Henry. And he lurked around the front yard for a really long time before he finally came on in the house and
Wow.
and hung out. And he was just lost. He did not know what to do. What do I do
Oh,
now?
wow.
What do I do? And it took a really long time, but I finally got his confidence built up enough that Henry's gone on. He's
Oh,
since
nice.
he's since popped back in and done some really kind things to help me. He's just terrific. The other
Awesome.
Yankee soldier I cannot get through to. He is so stuck. It is like a time warp. These soldiers and the manifestations of what people see, it is a time warp. They are still in March of 1865, and they are going
Wow.
about doing their duty. And they're just everywhere. Our neighborhood is rife with the stories about them.
Oh, that's amazing. That is so cool. All right. What about these pictures you sent us?
I did send you a few pictures.
Yeah.
That's a picture of my son when he was a little boy. I don't know how well you can see it, but I snapped a photo because he was wearing his father's shoes, and I just thought it was super cute. So I grabbed
Uh-huh.
the camera. On the right side, where my little boy is clearly looking, is a misty
Mist.
columnar figure that looks to have a head on it. If you see the actual real photo, it does tend to go into a head. This was an old 35 millimeter camera. This was not digital. It's not a camera strap. It's not my finger. It's in some places quite transparent. And I didn't even realize it was there and didn't even think about it till I got the film developed a long time later. But when you see it, my son is absolutely looking straight at this figure with great delight.
That's
So-
amazing.
I don't know. I offer it up for speculation.
Yep.
This is a picture I took in the Richard's DAR house. This is Mrs.
Uh-huh.
Richards' bedroom, and through the canopy, you see the window where she is often spotted.
Right.
I took this picture and I saw nothing. I was just trying to take pictures for the book or a website. And when I got them developed a long time after, in the left-hand side, you see like two tiers. It's like a skirt or a column on the left-hand side in front of the bed drapes
Mm-hmm.
of varying transparency. And I don't know.
Was
It's
that
just
in
a curious photo.
was that in the upstairs bedroom?
Yes.
Because I had a funny story. You've heard Mark Bryant and his story of the marbles
Yes.
and how the kids he left the marbles there because they made him move. So I was there on an investigation with him one night, and they made a public investigation, which I'm not real fond of, but I was there supporting them. And so I walked into, it wasn't that bedroom now that I remember it because it was a different bed, but I put out some marbles on the bed. And I told everybody in the room, okay, I'm setting up a camera here. We're focusing on the marbles, and we're going to see if we can duplicate that and see if it happens again. Well, I came back around a little while later, and the marbles were all scattered out everywhere. It had been moved vigorously.
Mhm.
And I'm like, oh my God, they actually had the marble. They actually moved the marbles again. And somebody standing there is like, oh, you had the camera on them. I didn't know that. I played with the marbles. Okay, never mind.
No.
Yeah, I thought that's one of the reasons I don't really like
That's why
public.
you have to be a skeptic, though. That's why
Yeah.
you have to be a skeptic, because you don't want to run around like a Murgatroyd reporting
Yeah.
that something amazing happened when it wasn't
Exactly.
valid.
Exactly. So, all right, here's this picture.
This is my
One of you.
favorite. I took this at one of my locations I've written about extensively, which no longer wishes to be known as a haunted location.
Yep.
At the time I took it, I was a volunteer, and we had set up for an event, and it was late in the day. I was getting ready to leave, and I wanted just to get some pictures of the tables and things. So I was snapping around where we'd set up for this event. Had no idea that several months later, when I got my film developed at Walmart, I would pull out this photo. You can see it's transparent at the bottom, and it is kind of transparent on the top. But to me, it looks like a photo of someone with their hand on their hip, standing directly in front of me. It was, again, with a 35 millimeter camera, 400 speed film. It was not a strap. It was not my finger. And I have no explanation for it or for any of these photos. I just offer them for people to wonder about, like I do.
Oh, yes, amazing. Those are cool. I like that. I say my new screen. Before we started season 2, I got my new screen back. My mother-in-law had borrowed it, and it's brighter. So on a picture like that, I can't really see any detail because that just kind of like a bright spotlight on my screen. I would have to take it into a photo editor and tone it down some, but that was awesome. Well, Elizabeth, thank you so much. This has been awesome, folks. If the watchers, if you're watching, please find her books. Like she said, there's a few stories in these 2 that are not in Haunted Mobile. Mm-hmm. So you want all 3 books to get those from her. And well, Elizabeth, final thoughts you want to share with us before we close out today?
Well, gosh, I think I just wanted to go back. I don't want to be a broken record, but just as we talked about on the Fairy Show, there's so much more to the world. I have come over my many years of doing this, and since I wrote the first books, I have so come to be completely convinced that there are levels of reality and non-physical worlds and things that we've not even begun to understand, and we're just barely starting to grasp.
Right.
So I would so hope that anyone who's having experiences or running into things that they don't understand will do like you say, Tom, and come into it with an open mind. Please don't automatically assume that something is negative just because it's different or new to you, but give it a fair chance and consider all possibilities and rule out all the things that it could be that can be explained. And then with what you're left with, approach that with an open mind and think of it as, is there something here that I could be learning from? Because we're all connected, and everything that happens to you is there to teach you something.
That's good. That is amazing. And if we'll just be open to learn, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
Lewis, any final thoughts? I'm so glad you got to be here with us today as an official ET.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I just wanted to express my pleasure. This has been a wonderful experience, and I really like your very positive outlook on things that, you know, people have to accept that there is a much wider world around us than we can physically sense ourselves. Mm-hmm. I also wanted to say I've always appreciated your dedication in your first book to Mrs. Wyndham, and where you say, Mrs. Wyndham, this is all your fault.
Where would we be without her? Where would we be without her?
And I have quoted that so many times in relation to my own work and my own life, in that Mrs. Wyndham was that driving force between in my very early life. And I really appreciate you saying that.
Thank you. Well, we need the pioneers like Mrs. Wyndham, and we need Tom to do these podcasts and go into all of these unexplored corners with a flashlight very bravely to try to get it out there and engage people and show them not to be afraid, that you can look at things and nothing will bite you, hopefully. So it was a pleasure to be here on your anniversary show, Tom. That's awesome.
Well, thank you so much. I think it's just fitting that you two were on here. Remember Lewis's book, Haunted Alabama? And, this Elizabeth laid the foundation in a lot of ways for the haunted paranormal side of things in Mobile, Alabama. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, she is so highly respected in the paranormal community, the paranormal family in Mobile, that I consider it an honor that I can call her a friend, a regular special guest, a special friend to the show. And before I forget about Elizabeth, I want to have another ghost hunting show. And it's going to be, we've been calling them, Did You Hear That? Because that's a big thing that everybody says. But I want to call it EMPs, not electromagnetic pulses, but empaths, mediums, and psychics.
Okay.
And the importance of the EMPs in ghost hunting and in paranormal investigations. And so I want to have you back for that. And so another empath that I know, and explore that side of ghost hunting. And so we'll have that coming up. Now, just to let you know, we do appreciate y'all being here 1 year. It's blowing my mind. We're already on our 10th episode of season 2, but we're going to be dark for a few weeks. And that's because Lynn and I are going on vacation. And so I could have planned a show in 2 weeks, but I said, no, I didn't want my last weekend in town to be focusing on a show when I'm focusing on going out of town. And then after we get back, I didn't want to jump back in and just go gung ho right into a show. I wanted to get back into the normal life routine. And I think the next show is scheduled for June 26th. So we've got a little over a month before the next show. But we will stay in touch on here, on Facebook and on YouTube. And now we're on Twitch. So go watch our videos there. So as we close out today, thank you. Well, again, thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Lewis. Thank you to the watchers. All right. Appreciate that. And to the watchers, especially, you're why we do this. We're why we come on, like Elizabeth says, shining the flashlight into these dark areas to show you they're really not that scary to begin with. So we'll see you in a little over a month, June 26th, I believe it is, we're trying to get one of the vice presidents for MUFON to be on with us to interview him about some of the UFO sightings over the past 50 or 60 years. I've got a couple I want to talk to him about. Thank you again. We'll see you next time. Strange Journeys. Goodbye.